Greetings, fellow travelers of the unknown. Paranormal M invites you to join us on a quest for truth beyond the ordinary. Subscribe and turn on notifications to embark on a journey that will challenge your perceptions and ignite your curiosity. One jolly ghost and murder of two. Happened in my house. I wasn't in the country that time. Me and my sister and my dad were in the UK. My other half and my family, including my two younger brothers and my mom, were back home. This incident took place every night at around 10 p.m. for so many days. It was always at exactly 10 p.m. These flying insects, maybe called desert termites, they'd appear out of nowhere in one specific room only. They said they tried to figure out how they could enter the room when they did everything to close the small holes and shut windows, but hundreds of them, all these termites, all in one specific room and at one specific time. This really freaked them out. Other things happened too, like they would hear steps on the roof, would feel something is under the bed that's running from one end to another constantly. And upon looking, there's always nothing. One more thing happened was one night around 2 a.m. they were sleeping. My mom got awoke by some noises from upstairs on the roof. She woke up my brother, who was 15 at that time. Went to go look and check. They both heard some man who was continuously laughing right near the stairs. They had in mind that it's some paranormal thing, but just to be on the safe side, my brother kept a knife with him. So if it is some guy, he would use it on him. But of course, no man or robber would be at someone's place laughing loud at 2 a.m. Anyway, my brother went up, and as soon as he stepped on the last stair, the laughs of the thing went away. It was complete silence. Many other things happened to them, including weird and scary dreams, seeing shadows, stuff moving right in front of their eyes. This left them traumatized, especially my mom. Later on, we got to know that about 50 years ago, a mother and her daughter were murdered in the same room where these things mostly happened. The mother and the child were killed by their in-laws. They gave it an image of a suicide by hanging her off the ceiling. But the strange thing to me is I lived in that house for almost 15 years. Never ever encountered anything. Neither my sister or my dad. It could be related to the murder of them two innocents, but it could be black magic, who knows. Anyways, then after a while they left the country too, and everything's fine. The shadow figure in the hotel. Currently, at the time of this story, I was 14. In my life, this is my third creepy encounter I've experienced. The hotel we were at was in Scotland for after a wedding party. I have no mental issues or physical issues that would make me have visions or anything. I take myself as a rational type of guy. I'm not too easily spooked and wasn't then either. I have a mind that would rationalize things for me. Now, on to the story. Me and my mom and dad were going to this hotel for an after-wedding party. First, when we arrived, we went to our hotel rooms, put everything in the room, and took my phone with me, of course. Then me and my family joined my extended family in the after-party. I was with kids my age and two a couple years younger. Of course, we played and hang out until dinner and then resumed with our games. Remember, it got quite dark outside. Me and my cousins were chatting about some game. I think it was something to do with cookies, not sure though. Anyway, one of my cousins wanted to get something from their room, which they forgot. So like any bored kids, we all dogpiled on the chance for at least something to do. So we got the keys to the room, headed alone up to the second floor of the house. We took the elevator up and walked around to the side of the hotel the room was on. We passed a double door with a big grand window that separated the hallway in the middle. We passed it and everything was happy and fun. Boring even, until we got to the room. Immediately, everybody felt that primal urge you feel when hairs are on the back of your neck rising. It's like when something like a predator or anything you feel scared of happens. We hadn't even went into the room yet. I turned to one of my cousins and I said, "You can open the door?" My voice was weirdly calm, even though how scared I was. Probably because I was the oldest. Something in me knew something was off. We all felt it. My cousin replied, taking the key from the youngest. Yeah, of course. She unlocked and opened the door, and for a split second as the gap in the door widened as we opened the door, I swear for the life of me I saw something. It was like a shadowy figure with no features to its body, standing next to the bed the way the room was set up. It's like as you open the door to the bathrooms on the opposite door, and to the slight right is where the bedroom with 2 beds and the figure was. Between the gap between the 2 beds, it disappeared as we fully opened the door. For all that was in me, I held in my scream of shock. Thought it was maybe a trick of the light or something at least, but for a second we stood there like idiots, looking into the room. Then we all piled in as the cousin that wanted to go to the room grabbed the item they wanted. Immediately, we all ran out and locked the door. But that wasn't enough for us, and we ran through the corridor terrified of this thing that scared us so much. As we ran, I looked back, and I swear it looked like something was peeking around the corner of the corridor. We passed through those doors again and stopped just for a moment. I turned fully to the window on the door and peered in. There was the same figure. This time, it wasn't still, it was running for us. No features still, but we felt its aura. The booming, terrifying aura. If it had a face, it would probably be one of nightmares. We, of course, weren't idiots. We ran back to where our parents were and told them about it. But they thought we were playing, but we weren't. But nevertheless, is what you mean. We continued with our night. That night, me and my parents walked to our hotel room. We had to pass the same room from before. The same feeling kept with me until I got into my hotel room, and, well, it was terrifying. I'm supposed to be rational, but every fiber of my being knew and thought that it happened, and, well, we all saw the figure as it ran at us. We all felt its presence. This never sat right with me. This story happened when I was in 6th grade, probably around 2008. My family and I had just moved into an apartment. My dad was working in Alaska. We lived in Texas. He was working as an ice road trucker, so he was out of the house more often than he was in. It's a cool job. This might not scare you or creep you out, but to this day this memory does not sit well, and I've tried making sense of it as much as I can. One evening I was sitting in the living room on the floor with my back against the couch watching TV. The apartment only had one entrance, which was in the living room. My parents' bedroom was right behind the wall where the TV was, so in order for them to leave the house, they'd have to first go through the living room, around the couch, and through the front door. As I'm sitting there, my mom opens her door and half pops out holding a red popsicle like an ice cream popsicle. She's smiling and waving at me to come into her room. I remember being so weirded out by this because she wasn't talking, and she always talks. She just stood there half behind the wall signaling for me to come, as if the popsicle was the prize if I did. Even then I remember thinking, how did she get that? Kitchen's in here. It was connected to the living room. So I said no. I usually listen to my mom, but this time I felt so off that I denied. Not 2 minutes later, the front door opens. My mom walks in with the phone talking to my grandma mid-conversation. She's bringing in groceries from the store, and I just didn't understand. How did she do that? There's no way. She even denies trying to pull a prank on me even to this day in 2024. The more I think about it, the more it doesn't bode well with my spirit. Might have been a good popsicle. Strange activity at abandoned train station, Belgium. Tonight, the 23rd of March, 2024, accompanied by a close friend. We drove to Belgium for a bit of an exploration. We stumbled upon an abandoned station, as in on line where trains still linger. Upon arriving at the location, something immediately caught our attention. Noises emanating from the premises. Initially, we presumed it to be a distant rock concert, given the thuds that we heard. However, upon scaling the fence, we realized the source was much closer than anticipated. Behind the train stood a warehouse. They were shrouded in darkness. This is where the sound originated. What initially resembled rock music now took on a much darker tone. I struggled to describe the sound other than likening it to the eerie sound effects from a horror film. It ceased being music and rather became kind of a profoundly dark ambient noise, evoking a sense of malevolence. Keep in mind, this was around 10 p.m. on a Saturday night, an odd time for activity in an abandoned station. Upon our arrival, we observed people walking within one of the trains. We crouched down, observed until they exited the train, then proceeded directly to the warehouse, wielding flashlights in the darkness. Intrigued, we decided to investigate further, approaching the train from which they emerged. On the right side facing the forest. This afforded us our first clear view of the warehouse. All was dark, no windows were visible, but a faint glimmer of light emanated from beneath the large sliding door. The prolonged duration of the noise only heightened the tension. Approximately 40 minutes were spent at this location. Suddenly, we noticed the flashlights approaching our direction coming from the train tracks. We hastily retreated, watching from a safe distance as they returned to the train, this time remaining outside. They were just looking around, as if they might have heard us. I'm positive that they have not seen us this night. After a brief interval, they departed once more, captured on film. Feeling thoroughly unnerved by the unsettling sounds resonating in the darkness of the abandoned station, adjacent to the forest, my friend and I resolved to investigate once more. Proceeding cautiously, we positioned ourselves beside the warehouse where the sound became distinctly clearer. Intermittently, we heard loud thuds. These thuds were reminiscent of heavy metal colliding. There still was this dark, eerie sound, constantly changing tones and frequency. However, the last sound I heard defies description. I have it recorded on film. The last clip, entirely shrouded in darkness, captures this moment. When filming, we were standing right next to the warehouse. It sounded akin to the startup sequence of a powerful weapon or the ignition of a jet engine. This peculiar sound was followed by a resonating thud. Pausing briefly, we then observed the return of the flashlights. This time we sprinted back to our cars, bewildered by the experience. After a brief discussion, we decided to make one final attempt. Approaching the premises again, we immediately noticed the absence of sound. Proceeding with utmost caution, we arrived at the warehouse to find the faint glimmer of light beneath the sliding door had vanished. Venturing to the opposite side of the warehouse, we found nothing. We walked around the warehouse, and there was no road or path to walk on, just dirt, mud, and train tracks. At this moment, we decided to leave, and when we were back at the car, we started thinking about what this could have been. The individuals we saw walking were wearing blue overalls, indicating that they were not merely urban explorers casually observing. It's highly unlikely that these individuals were working on a Saturday evening in the dark. Had there been ordinary music playing, I wouldn't have harbored any peculiar thoughts about this experience, but the sounds in the concealed location have prompted me to make this post. Is there anybody here that can explain any of these sounds? Are there machines producing these sounds of which I'm unaware? I must ascertain this before considering a return. I have footage of all the sounds, and the guys walking around the tracks. I am interested in using those sounds. Ghosts, alien abduction, sleep paralysis. A few years back, my mother and I lived alone in a 2-floor apartment above a small pizza place. It had a bedroom downstairs and 2 upstairs. My mother never told me until we moved out, but an old man had died upstairs in her room. For many, many years, I believed that I'd been followed by a spirit who became much more aggressive during the time that we lived there. I've always thought this spirit was under the impression that this old man was this old man that wanted us out of his home. There were many unexplainable occurrences there between all of us. My brother and sister would visit every other weekend before going back to their father. My brother would sleep in the room downstairs. My mother would be in the biggest one upstairs, and my sister and I took the one across from her. In our room, there was a large walk-in closet with a door immediately to the right where you walk into the room. Then one bed at the far left corner, and another bed for me in the far right. The closet door and sometimes my bedroom door would always be open during the night, even though neither were malfunctioning or broken whatsoever. We tested this many times, but they only opened by themselves in the night. One morning I woke up to my sister asking me, "Did you say there was aliens last night?" I respond very confused. "No, what?" She tells me this. "I woke up late in the night and looked over to you sitting straight up in bed pointing toward the end of my bed saying my sister's name. Looks like there's aliens." When I looked at the end of my bed, I saw 4 tiny black humanoid shadows get up from crouching and run across the room to the closet. Then I lost control over my body, quickly fell onto the bed and started shaking violently before passing out again. Mind you, when we woke up, the closet door was left open, had the light on, bedroom doors open too. The doors were closed and lights were off. We went to sleep. Imagine you go to shut a door and nothing pulls back. Spoke about this apartment in a previous post, but alone for a quick background. A few years back, my mother and I lived in a 2-story, 3-bed, 2-bath apartment above a tiny pizza place. My brother and sister would come every other weekend before returning back to her dad's. On this particular weekend, my brother didn't come to the house for whatever reason, and my mom was out with friends. My sister had a friend come over to spend the night, and we were all just sitting in her room upstairs chatting. My sister decided to play a joke and lay under her bed and pretend to be asleep. She placed her ear on the floor and then suddenly said, "Do you guys hear that?" Certainly wasn't a notification. Her friend and I say no confused, and she explains that it sounded like somebody coming up the stairs to the apartment. Our apartment had a door and immediately had a huge flight of stairs to get to the first floor, and we were on the top of a pizza place. The sound of those stairs was unmistakable. So feeling confident with there being 3 of us, we started walking down the stairs to the kitchen where we heard banging in my brother's room. My brother's room was the only bedroom downstairs that was located in the kitchen. We slowly walked down and grabbed knives from the kitchen as we were making our way to the room. My sister walks in, flicked the light on, and searched the entire room to find nothing. Mind you, there was really nowhere to hide. No closet, no under the bed. It was kind of like a storage room with a single window. When she started walking out of the room, she shut the light off as she was closing the door, and all of a sudden she started screaming and pulling on the door. It was as if there was somebody on the other side pulling the door back open with extreme force. My sister was not a tiny girl and was pulling on that door with all of her weight. It simply was not possible. Then her friend and I looked up and saw a very tall, dark figure pulling back on the door, and it suddenly slammed. Freaked out and ran out of the house straight down to the pizza shop and asked them for help. An employee came to our apartment with us and searched the entire house top to bottom with us. Found absolutely nothing. I'm convinced it was the old man who passed on in my mother's room. The ghost was really into Miley Cyrus, I guess. When I was younger, my mother and I moved around a lot, but we started off living with my mother's boyfriend at the time for a few years before moving to another house. And then the creepy apartment. It was a 3-story house, and the basement had many different vintage items, such as this old duck shooter game system that still worked. Not sure what it's called. It's an old popcorn machine. There was also one of those old box TVs from like the 90s to 2000s. We had that in the corner. One night, my mom's boyfriend and I are watching TV on it and in the basement sometime before deciding to go see what my mom was doing upstairs. We walked upstairs and sat on the couch with my mom when all of a sudden Wrecking Ball by Miley Cyrus started playing full volume on the old TV in the basement. My mom's boyfriend and I went downstairs to turn it off, discussed how weird it was considering we turned the TV off and only had the volume at like 13. Not to mention we weren't listening to Miley Cyrus. We were watching a show, but that's old, right? Then we went back upstairs and sat down with my mom, and a few minutes later started hearing Wrecking Ball playing on the TV with the volume slowly increasing until it's 100 again. I made her boyfriend turn it off alone because I was scared now. Never happened again, and there have never been any other incidents. At least with the TV before or since. Something really strange happened to me, and I'm looking for explanations. So first of all, I'd like to point out nothing strange or paranormal has ever happened in my house before. Been living there for 18 years. That was since I was born. I always believed in ghosts and spirits, but I never suspected or thought my house was haunted, till now. So basically last weekend, my family and I went on a short road trip to go visit a family member. We'll come back someday. When we were already in the car, ready to go, I noticed I left my AirPods in my room. I quickly ran inside to get them. I was the last person inside the house, as everybody else was already inside the car, and remember this. When we came back home that night, I was the first person to enter the house and went directly to my room. First thing I noticed was a large yellow package in my bed. I was extremely confused because I hadn't remembered putting it there and no one else was home. So I was just wondering who the fuck put it there. I opened the file up and it was my mom's, who had died of cancer 15 years ago. There were MRI scans. I always knew that the big package was there, but I never knew what it was until now. I then went to go show my parents, my dad and my stepmom. They were still going in and out of the house getting stuff out of the car. My dad was extremely confused. Not because I took them out, he was more confused on how I got that package out so quickly since we had barely gotten home. To add more context, that large yellow package was at the very bottom of the closet. So in order to get that out, you would have had to remove a lot of things, including heavy boxes. I never got the package out, and it wasn't there when I left. No one was home. So the only realistic explanation is somebody broke into the house, knew where the folder was, took all the stuff above it out, put the folder on my bed, and then put everything back into the closet exactly how it was. I mean, it doesn't make sense. Why would somebody do that? Is my house haunted, or am I just going insane? For some backstory on my house, the previous tenant lived here all of his life with his mother. The guy lived here about 50 years. To my knowledge, his mother was very ill and sadly passed away due to the illness. I moved into this house at the beginning of October 2023. Everything was fine at first. It's larger than my old home, which gives a lot of space for the dog, and she's like a 45-kilogram old English bulldog. So the space was definitely appreciated. But they're cute. And also a lot more storage space. I'm not a medium, but I'm definitely tapped into my senses. And ever since I moved into this house, I've pictured an at-home hospital bed and all the wires and machines and stuff attached to an older woman. Probably around 70. And that's what's currently in my dining room. This woman had short gray curly hair, wrinkles, glasses, a purple shirt, blue eyes, and a pale complexion. Around late November is when things started happening. Most incidents stemming from the dining room. They say that dogs can see what we can't, and I truly believe that. In the first incident, my dog walked into the living room and into the dining room, looking up as she were following someone, then sat wagging her tail as if there was somebody in front of her. The second incident came around early January. She was staring to the dining room, wagging her tail as if somebody was in there. This has happened at least 5 times. She's also been sat in a chair at the dining room and gave a paw to the air. Around 2 weeks ago, things moved away from just the dog. All the TVs in the house will randomly turn on in the middle, just like there's no remote nearby and it's the middle of the night. Last night I went to use the restroom. I didn't lock the door because I saw no point. I was on my phone when I heard a click, so I looked up and the door is now locked. Just now I was laid into bed drifting off to sleep and I was disturbed by 4 knocks on my ceiling. Not sure if I'm going insane or what, but I definitely feel as if there's something happening here. Pretty sure my apartment is haunted. What do I do? Okay, so yesterday evening I went to go to bed with my boyfriend and his daughter's ring light turned itself on in her bedroom. I see the light on and she's not home, so I tell him to check it out. When he opens the door, the ring light's on with obviously no one in there. We look at each other both confused, and when we look back it shuts itself off. I was in the kitchen just watching the light linger out of the doorway until it shut off. He said, "Nope," shut the door. Flash forward maybe an hour and we're laying in our bed, and out of nowhere the Alexa device beeps like the volume had been adjusted. We paid no mind. We went to bed. This evening, things got, well, spooky to say the least. Started with a loud bang from our living room. Me in the bedroom, my boyfriend and his daughter in her room. He texted me simultaneously to ask if it was me. I was texting him the same. Shortly after, I'm on the phone with a good friend, and my Alexa again 3 times changed on its own volume. I unplug my Alexa, and one of my boyfriend's daughter's room turns itself to max volume. I hear him fighting with it to turn it down, and it continues to do this with him until he unplugs it. I open her bedroom to find my light in the living room was off. I turned it off again, and I go to walk away, and it turns back on. So I turned it off again, and this happened 3 times before I manually switched it completely off. Get to my bedroom, and the ring light in his daughter's room turns on and off 3 times on its own. He unplugs it. Shortly after, Alexa in the living room starts to play music, so I go out and just unplug that too. I walk to go to my bedroom, and the Alexa in my bathroom is now on full blast playing music, so I go to unplug it. When I get out of the bathroom, the entertainment center's lights on. Unplug that too. As I go to walk out, the TV turns on. I turn it off and go walk out, and the PS5 now turns on. I walked away because I was just done. About 10 minutes later, I go to turn off the PS5, and my TV's back on. And this TV's old. I don't even have a remote, and I turn all of it off and get mad and kind of yell out that I'm done and it's enough. I shit you not, I go to walk out of the living room and the kitchen sink turns on. I'm talking full blast on. I stopped dead in my tracks. I start to panic. My boyfriend comes out, sees the water running in me, and just as confused and concerned as I was. I ended up pacing for about 20 minutes, panicking, and my boyfriend stops me and suddenly I feel 2 hands around my throat. It feels like the air in my lungs has been sucked out. There's a fear in my bones I've literally never felt before, and I can't breathe. I couldn't even gasp for air. I dropped to the floor, and my boyfriend ran to get me water, thinking I was just having a panic attack or something. But by the time he got back in front of me, it released. It felt as though somebody took a burning pain to my throat. The tingling from the feeling is still there. The Damn Man. When I, a 47-year-old female, was just a young girl, I lived on the south side past the Palms, Gypsy, Queensland. I had this big window by my bed that looked out over a hill of grass paddock with a big dam at the bottom of the hill. Ah, that kind of dam. We were told as kids never to go near that dam, but we didn't want to. It wasn't a normal dam like the ones I would swim in at my friends' houses. No, the water here was stained a putrid black. Plus, we had a pool. But what I remember as a kid is looking out late at night and swearing I could see a man standing by the water's edge. It was always dark, but every night I could make out a silhouette just standing there. I'm not even sure what compelled me to stare out the window at night to begin with. I would cry out to my parents about it, but they thought it was just a young girl's imagination. Always sent me to bed, scolding me for opening my curtains. I sometimes question whether I was seeing that man on those nights, but I am certain about one particular night. It had been raining for a few days, and I felt almost safer now as I couldn't see too far down the paddock through the thicket of falling water. It didn't stop me from staring out the window, none the same. After a while of looking, lightning struck through the sky, and in that light I saw the figure again. But this time they weren't near the dam, they were further up the hill, just up on the boundary of the house and the yard. I was absolutely mortified, screamed the whole house down. My parents tried all they could to calm me. They assured me that nothing was there, but as they were looking toward the window, lightning lit up the clouds. Outside, the outline of a man standing underneath the palms just next to my window was shown standing, looking right toward us. Now my mom was clutching me and frantically telling my father to call the police. He instead grabbed his rifle, turned on the spotlights, and started scoping the outside of the house. He let out a few warning shots, which at the time had me and my mom wrapped up in the blankets between the bed and the wall. He never saw them. My parents finally believed that there was something out there that night, but they refused to believe that I'd seen that figure every night for years. We eventually moved from that house a couple of years later, and in the meantime, my parents had planted bushes outside my window to block the view so I couldn't see anymore out there. At least, no one could see in too. So when I gazed down some nights through a crack in the curtain and through the slowly growing shrubs, sure enough, there was a man standing in the shadows that I could barely make out. I knew it was him. I've never seen anything like that since, and I hope to never witness something like it again. It traumatized me back then, and I still suffer sleep problems to this day. I could only imagine what it would do to me now. I'd probably drop dead of a heart attack. Saw a ghost a while back, starting to doubt if it was real. So when I was about 8, I saw a ghost in my bedroom. I was sitting on the floor up against my bed, just staring into space. That's when out of nowhere this portal just appeared. I don't know what else to call it. It was in the corner of my room to my left. It was white and floating. It slowly got bigger. I wasn't shocked, I just kind of watched it happen. It didn't feel real. I didn't particularly care at the time for some reason. Anyway, out of the portal came a pure white figure. It was big, chubby in the middle, and I don't remember much about how it looked. It did have a nose, though. Stayed in the corner for a bit, just kind of hovering. Then it slowly made its way across to me. It stood there in front of me and left my closet and never saw it again. This happened 10 years ago. But I've told people about this, and they never believe me. So now I don't know if I believe myself. I know what happened, I saw it. It's just how, why? I don't get it. Was I hallucinating? Did I just have that strong, sense of an imagination? Could I delude myself into believing something? Or is this an actual ghost? Sometimes I think out of the corner of my eye I see it again. Like it's just this white presence standing there. It's weird and creepy. There's a period of time where all my stuff would rearrange itself. I'd put something down, and by the end of the day, it would be somewhere else. My roommate and I pissed off her ghost. I would have been around 19 or 20 at the time and living with my roommate, also my best friend, who for a long time as I can remember has had a ghost following her. It's messed with me in the past, but never anything like this. Just doing shit to scare me, but that's another story. Sorry if this is kind of long, a little bit scattered. This happened about 3 years ago. I don't remember all the details. But back to the story. One night we decided to get drunk and watch ghost movies. About halfway through our second movie, we get the bright idea to start antagonizing her ghost. Super smart, I know. We start by saying all kinds of stupid stuff. Things like, I bet you don't have the ghost balls to do that. Bet you aren't even real. After the movies, we go to bed, forget about it until the next night. It's around 11 p.m. She's at work and I'm home. She has an around 150-pound Anatolian shepherd. I hear him freaking out, full-on terrified screaming. I rush out of my room to see him pinned between the open laundry room doors and her metal bar chairs. I start freaking out trying to figure out how he got stuck because I know for a fact I closed the doors after I was done. But if I didn't, our cats would get stuck behind the washer and he never messed with the chairs. After I get him unstuck, he starts growling at the corner of the dining room, teeth bared, hackles raised, and he pushes me down the hallway away from the room. He doesn't let me pass him, but I go check the doors and make sure that they're locked. So I put him in my room at the end of the hallway, which he was not happy about. I go to check the doors and sure enough, they're all locked with the deadbolts in place. As I'm walking back into my room, I get a notification on my phone from our Ring camera. It's telling me that somebody's at the door. I open the app, but I don't see anybody. I only hear clicking like somebody's tapping on the microphone. I look out the window and I don't see anybody either. And when I walk away, I get another notification to hear from the tapping noises. This happens multiple more times. I'm just standing there staring at my phone wondering what the fuck's going on. Then it clicks. It has to be the ghost. I don't even know what to do because how do you protect yourself from a pissed off and antagonized ghost? At this point, I'm fucking terrified. I'm home alone with her still and training guard dog, and I can't get a hold of her because she can't have her phone on her while at work. She won't be home till maybe after 2 a.m. So I rush back to my room and hide with her dog too until she gets home. After she gets home, I'm still feeling pretty shaken up. So I tell her, let's go to your room. I have to tell you what happened. Because I didn't want to be anywhere near the dining room or kitchen when we get to her room. And when we get in there, her alarm clock is thrown from the other side's window directly at her feet. She just looks at me like, what the fuck, dude? So instead, we go into my room. I tell her everything that's happened. She ended up sleeping in my room that night. Although I didn't get much sleep because I 100% believed it would invade my dreams. The next day we did some cleansing and heavy apologizing. Double dose on the latter. Ghosts in the bars. So I worked at a rock bar in Scotland for a couple of years when I was in my early 20s. I experienced paranormal encounters in both the bar I worked in and also the bar's sister establishment. One quiet night I was standing chatting to some regulars when I saw my supervisor, a small, pale, long, black-haired woman. They ran past the bar. Not even 30 seconds later, she walked up behind me. I asked her why she had run past the bar and she claimed only had just gotten back. The bar was based in an old townhouse, and there was a dumb waiter installed. When I first started, I walked into the kitchen to let the chefs know that there was a check-out. I saw a man in overalls run away and past the dumb waiter. Thinking somebody's playing a joke, I kind of just walked around to catch them, but there was only a brick wall. We were also very sure that the woman's bathroom was haunted, but it didn't feel like a negative presence. Years before I worked there had been overdoses in this bathroom. Stalls would be locked and nobody would be inside. There was a feeling of being watched, and the taps, which you had to press down hard on, would come on when no one was there. Finally, my scarce experience in the bar's sister establishment, also a rock/dive bar. I'd never been in it until I was covering a shift there. I went to the cellar to change a keg and had the scariest feeling. My hands were shaking so much that I couldn't change the keg. So I swapped out with my colleague and took some bin bags out back. I stood there and had a cigarette but couldn't shake the feeling. In this area, unfortunately years before sex workers had lost their lives here and went back inside. Odd to mention. When pulling a pint, I noticed I had 3 long bloody scratch marks down my arm that I should have felt upon happening, but didn't. Some things I can't explain away. I heard a female voice calling for a little girl while on a walk by the river with my ex. I, a 15-year-old, was a female, or am. I was on a walk with my now ex Jake, 14-year-old male, down by the river that runs close to her school. We had just gotten down there and were chilling, enjoying each other's company. I glanced across the river. A figure, rather short, toddler size if anything, is standing right in with Jake on the other side of the river by the trees. Now, before I get any comments saying that this was just a little child with my eyesight, I can see faces enclosing from the other side of the river where Jake and I were. It was just the figure of a little child with no clothing, mostly like a shadow. I didn't think much of it as I do see figures pretty frequently, especially down by the river. I quietly told Jake as he knows about what I've seen, and he assured me that it was okay. He would continue on our walk. Fast forward a couple of days and some friends, Jake and I are hanging out in a small forest just past the school grounds. We were quoting Harry Potter lines and just generally being total dorks. One of our friends had slid down a semi-steep leafy embankment, and Jake and another friend, we'll call him Tommy, went down to help the friend, Charlie, for this story, who had slid down. I begin to hear a female voice, not belonging to any of us, sounding like an adult pitch, not a higher-pitched teenager's voice like mine and Charlie's. It was coming not far from where Charlie, Jake, and Tommy are. I get a little bit unsettled, and I normally don't hear voices. At first, it was mostly unintelligible yelling. Then it was becoming a call for somebody named Emily. I began to get quite panicked and ushered the others to get back up so we could head back to school. I told Jake what happened, not intending for Charlie to hear, who piped in and told us that she'd been seeing figures a lot recently. Whether or not she was lying, I've no way of knowing. Charlie's just one of those people who likes to direct the conversation onto themselves, so I didn't believe her. A grim reaper followed me home. Anyway, I was working at a different nursing home on an overnight shift. I was only a CNA at the time. This building only had 2 halls for resident rooms and only 1 aide and an RN on duty at night. The common thing to do is to grab a chair and sit in the corner by the nurse's station. That's where you can see down both halls. In case somebody got up and wandered, you know. I'd just finished rounds, the RN in the nurse's room and station, and I was in my chair reading a book. I brought this book to pass the time between duties. The hall to my left started having electricity interruption, just enough to catch my attention. I looked up just at this very large, cloaked-like shadow figure was walking across the hall, like going from one room to the next, straight across. It was so tall that it touched the ceiling and blocked the ceiling light as it moved past. I just sat watching it. It slowly moved through the residence door and disappeared. I tried to brush it off and continue the night. When rounds came round again, I found the resident in the room unalive, dead. I figured it was a coincidence, weird similarity, nothing more. Till 2 more residents appeared the same way in the next 2 shifts after. I'll never forget the face and the pose of the last resident. They were frozen in straight terror. I quit shortly after and returned to the nursing job I had prior. And soon I saw the figure roaming the halls there, and eventually saw it roaming my house. It never has harmed me. It doesn't feel evil, but it's definitely not a fan of abusive, ignorant people. While I'd be at work, I would just torment and haunt my ex-boyfriend, make an appearance if she started an argument or be mean to my kids. It's still here and likes to simply roam the house, never bothered or making anybody uncomfortable, just Well, I just see it roam by once in a while. Waking up finally. Finally, after a year being with my very sensitive significant other, beginning to see things out of the corner of my eye. While this would probably freak out a number of people, I've embraced the metaphysical realm, in large part due to my significant other's experiences. That word drives me nuts. Though I've had a few in the past that lead me toward this path, I have had what I can only assume their former cat brush against my leg unexpectedly, perhaps a month before, so I kind of guessed something was up then. It was only a few nights ago that I thought I saw something move by the doorway, only to have them confirmed to me moments later. After the mess that we'd gone through with a certain entity, I didn't have much fear of what else there was really to encounter. But I have been unnerved when I'm the only one awake and don't feel entirely equipped to handle this new experience just yet. For now, though, I still live vicariously through my significant other, and learning how to correctly interact with the other side, so as not to offend them and to receive answers back. To them, I'm a mumbling nuisance that really shouldn't be able to speak to them since I can't personally sense them. Plus, my significant other is apparently a beacon of light on that side. So I'm both drowned out and, well, I get the benefit of the allowed interaction of being near them. Someday, perhaps, I'll get there and it'll feel so lopsided, and in one way, it's like needing a personal translator. Well, maybe in another country. You can only learn the language so fast. A dream, a cat, and a mimic. I almost never have nightmares, but a few nights ago I had one of something written in scratches on the back of my child. Enough to draw blood and likely scar, but not deep enough to be life-threatening. Woke me straight up. Yeah. I was only asleep for 20 minutes, checked my child because it seemed so real. All was good before I fell back asleep. I noticed they were whimpering in their sleep like they were having a bad dream. Quick background of me. I'm innately talented in shielding and mental wards. You're innately talented in shielding and innately talented in mental wards. If you don't know what they are, Google it, or look for other posts or comments from me to describe what I do. Alrighty then. I was exhausted from heavy labor, but I put my energy into a protective shield around them before nodding off to sleep. I figured if anybody was going to get attacked, it would be me, as I could deal with it better. Had I not been so exhausted, I'm sure none of this would have been an issue. The rest of the night I had a rolling dream. I'd wake up and stir, maybe use the bathroom and go back to sleep and resume it. I had a rolling dream of weird, haunting events in an unknown restaurant in Minnesota. It was nowhere near me, but I remembered being there. My recently deceased cat made an appearance early in the dream cycle. I know he was there because he felt so much more real, and I could recall remarking how tangible he was in the dream. I knew he was supposed to be dead, but here he was and letting me just see him. Also let me pet him. Near the end of the dream, he appeared again, and I recall his markings vividly as I held him. Another creature was trying to convince me that it was him. It was a similarly black cat, but grotesque, as if it was dipped in blood and let set out dry and become sticky. Its eyes were all wrong and menacing. It almost mockingly dismissed it because, well, I had my cat in my arms. I couldn't be deceived, not even a little. I firmly believe that he came to guard me from this creature and its psychic attack. I'll add one more thing to this. My family is fairly certain that there's a mimic in the house. All of us have heard it, usually trying to sound like a child crying even though they're so often with us in the same room. I feel that because I was so tired from the day, my own defenses were weak. When I blocked it from going after the child, it came after me in the dreams. living in a family house from 1700 to 1800s. I just moved in last month. The house was owned by a wealthy family from the 1700s to late 1900s. Thought it was 18. The backstory I got from my tenant is that the last live residents lived in this house and died in the late 1990s. One of them was a male who lived in the apartment I'm in right now. Lots of units, but only 3 are occupied. There's pictures on the wall from the first to last generation of the family, handmade towels and other stuff from over 100 years ago. Furniture is pretty much the same as it was back in the late early 1900s. There's 2 cabinets with a collection of gold plates and other stuff, and also a bottle of some liquor dated 1806. I found 2 spoons, one of which is very bent and looks like to be from the time of kings and castles. There's a crest on the spoon which matches up with the crest of the fortress in Italy. Anyway, I heard some rustling in the hallways last night. But for the rest, it's been pretty peaceful. I do feel like there are some spirits here purely due to the age and the fact that nearly nothing's changed since then. There's old hand-painted paintings and pictures of the city from about 100 years ago, including some other souvenirs from Australia from the mid-1900s. I don't know what I wanted to achieve with this post, but I'm debating on using a spirit box to see if any spirits around. I've always been fascinated by the past, and this house has a blast to the past kind of a feeling. Should I use a spirit box, and what can I do to establish that there is activity? Poltergeist encounter, maybe. This was years ago while I was in high school. I was playing video games alone in my basement with the Xbox playing through the TV. I had lost the TV remote a while back, so I had to adjust the volume by pressing the buttons on the side of the TV. The audio played through both the TV speakers, along with those cheap earbuds I had plugged into the Xbox controller. Even with the earbuds plugged into the controller, I had to stand up and walk to my TV to adjust the volume. One time while I was alone, I took my earbuds off and placed them along with my controller down onto the couch next to me. I went over to the TV to adjust the volume. It took me like 3 seconds to slightly adjust the volume, and when I turned around, the earbuds were unplugged from the controller and vanished. Naturally, I look underneath the couch and in between the cushions for these earbuds. I've lost stuff down there in those places before, after all. However, after about 20 minutes of searching, I couldn't find them. There's no way that somebody came downstairs and took them. The only way down was right next to the TV. I would have seen them in my peripheral vision or heard them walking down. I asked my family just in case they did anything with them, and of course they all said no. I decided to give it a rest and just assume that they would turn up sooner or later, which is kind of what they did, but in a creepy way. The next 2 days I went back and forth down the basement, and I took apart the couch and even cut into the fabric underneath. Wanted to see if it was deeper in the couch. Nothing. I couldn't find them anywhere. Even after looking everywhere else in the basement, still couldn't find them. Gave up once again and put the couch back together and decided to just get new earbuds. I swear about 2 weeks later I go down to the basement and the earbuds are sitting on the exact part of the couch that I'd left them. I immediately go ask my family why they're messing with me. They swear they didn't do anything, and this time they weren't plugged into the controller, they were just sitting on the couch. This seemed so strange to me, and everybody else I told it to. It was like the earbuds were taken to another dimension and just brought right back. I did a quick Google search about similar phenomena, and I learned that it is a pretty common trait among poltergeist folklore. That objects will vanish, and they'll make them reappear at a later time. Sometimes in the same spot, sometimes in another location. The only other thing that happened in this house similar to this was, well, the thing with my brother where his wallet went missing was found on the top shelf of his closet, but apparently he didn't even put it there. But you'd have to ask him about that. The Butterfly People. This was a story I'd been obsessed with since I saw a video on the subject by William DeFalco on YouTube. He had a pretty good series of videos about obscure cryptids, ghost stories, and the like. Of note, the butterfly people of Joplin. Back in May of 2011, as many know, an EF5 tornado devastated Joplin, MO, killing 158 people and leveling houses and buildings. However, from the rubble came stories of mysterious entities that were dubbed the butterfly people. Kids would describe beings with colorful wings shielding them from debris by wrapping them up, or they would even use their bodies. Ultimately, what they are, I've been able to see many different theories. The most blatant one is that they were angels that intervened to save a few while others came to collect the souls of the deceased. Others think they're fairies or some form of cryptid, aliens even. Or there's the more likely one, the third man phenomenon, wherein it refers to the times when people are in real life-threatening situations and were believed to have received help from some invisible guide. So something like kids perceive the idea of the butterfly people to deal with a stressful situation. And keep in mind that Joplin is in the Bible Belt, so if the angel theory is anything to go by, they only think that they're seeing celestial beings. I've been interested in knowing more about these entities for a few years now. Tried searching for similar accounts, and I did try researching a few. One story goes as follows. A mother and their young daughter were caught in a storm. They saw their car was about to collide with them. The mother shielded her daughter with her body and braced for impact, except it never came. "Weren't they pretty?" the girl asked. She clarified that she was alluding to the butterfly people that had saved them. I was looking for years to see what the name of the mother and the daughter were, but then I heard different variations of the story from secondhand accounts. Or there was one that seemed more ridiculous. The idea that some people were trapped in a church's basement and the storm caused columns to crumble, trapping them in. According to one video I watched, people claimed 6 men came in and lifted the heavy columns up and left. I tried searching for the name of the church and some of the survivors at least, but I found nothing. It sounds more like a case of mass hysteria or bullshit. Like, I don't intend on stepping on anybody's faith, because that would be a douchey thing to do. Indeed. But I always find these stories kind of funny. You expect people to buy that these angels would save some people and just leave the others for their fate? I mean, I fully like how the stories are meant to portray hope and healing after national disaster, but at the same time, they come off as kind of offensive people whose family members perished in the storm. Just gives off bad feelings, like, good for you, some butterfly angels saved your son, so why did another family lose their child? Comes off as being somewhat blissfully ignorant. Blissfully ignorant. Meant more as an excuse to explain away why this bad thing happened. Indeed, Gecko. I'm curious if anybody had any experience with the butterfly people and later recanted, or if there's still some stand by what they believe to have seen. Just kind of want to hear more stories than the ones that I'd seen circulating around and maybe could be considered just legends, since there's no primary source. You heard them. Any butterfly people out there? Put that in the comments. I saw a ghostly face when I was younger. I was about 4 or 5, so the year was 2011 or 2012. I was on holiday with my mom and dad. We were staying in a hotel room with 2000s kind of decoration. I woke up in the middle of the night and all the lights were off. It was pitch black in the room. I was scared and I wanted to go into my mom's bed, so I remembered that I sat up in bed and stood up. At that point, I saw a white face a bit further from me with black eye sockets with white in the middle of them. There was a mouth too, and a distinct small nose. I started walking toward it thinking it was my mom's face, and I was calling out to it. Then my mom turned the bedside lamp on and she was on the opposite side of the room in bed. I looked back over to where the face was and it was gone. She asked me what I was doing. I didn't know what to say really because I was so confused. So she put me back to bed and I fell asleep within minutes. How do people do that? I woke up that morning in a local hotel, still confused about what I saw, and I told my mom, but since I was just a child, she said I was probably just imagining things. I know I definitely wasn't, though. And the annoying thing is, neither my mom or dad know what hotel it was that we stayed in, since it was a long time ago. So I can't even look into the hotel's backstory or reviews. I'm wondering if anybody knows what kind of apparition I saw. I know it might sound unbelievable, but I just want to share. I've always heard voices in my room. Drove me crazy trying to figure out where they were coming from. It felt like people were stalking me at night through my window. I also heard whispers when I was about to do something, as if they were trying to make me go insane. When I was sleeping, I often felt like somebody woke me up by shoving me. This happened several times, which confirmed my suspicions. Someone even opened my AirPod once. I also saw eyes staring at me from the roof while I was trying to sleep. Couldn't believe my eyes and I let it go. After about a year, I took dates with a lid of the pod. It started shaking by itself. I recorded it and then it moved more than once. And despite seeing this, I foolishly ate 2 of the dates that I had stood on their own. Foolishly ate. The food dates. Or the fruit. Later that night, I felt something making me smile and moved my chin up and down while I slept. I recorded myself and I saw it really happening, and something black moving underneath my eyelid with the camera zooming in and out like it was trying to glitch the camera. It was terrifying and I deleted it quickly. Well, I started praying. Most of the disturbances stopped, but I still feel something moving in my left eye. When I read the Quran before sleeping, it gets weaker, but it bothers me, and, moves my eye whenever I'm close to it. I don't pray or listen to the Quran. I listened to the Quran during the day. My sweat turned into something like a black string coming out of my body. I realized my problem might be the evil eye. I had symptoms, but never really believed in it. The voices I heard could be black magic because I hear it when I pray or I listen to the Ruqyah, the Islamic recitations. I always smelled weird, bad odors when I was alone, which made me think that I'm a target. Lately, while sleeping with my brothers, I felt a strong repeated flash like a camera taking pictures. I opened my eyes and I saw it happening. I turned on the light and it stopped. Now I struggle with unbalanced walking and movements, like something's controlling me. Whenever I put down, it's like shaking for a moment. Sometimes when I try to catch or reach for something, I miss. I also feel something's touching my private area, especially my balls and dick. Excuse them. And it works with my thoughts, like whenever I like it, it makes like a, I'm not going to read that. Point is, the guy feels tingles all over his body. Let's just put it there. Who picked this? That was nasty. You guys don't need to hear it. So I think the voices are due to black magic. Whatever's inside me is serving that magic. Based on some of my research and help from Islam and black magic symptoms. I hope nobody suffers from this guy's black magic symptoms and everybody has a good night. See ya.